Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my beer-drinking host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, cheers, brother. What's going on, man?
Nothing. Got snowed in today or frozen in, whatever. So more ice than snow out here on the East Coast. But got to sit home and watch the Combat Sports news ticker and see some breaking news for the day before we get into UFC 97 picks. Just before we started recording, I guess we might as well talk about the top of the hour news. UFC 300 just added a BMF title fight with Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway, and then Jim Miller and Bobby Green are also added to the card. Um, which I'm glad Jim Miller is on 300 because he wanted to be on 300. So I'm glad he's getting there. But Gaethje versus Holloway for a BMF title. I'm a fan of both fighters, but I don't. I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but who cares? I don't like this fight. I don't like this fight at all. I think
I
it's
said it was coming last week. I said it was
yeah.
coming. There was a gimmick fight coming, and this was the one that I heard rumored that seemed to make sense based off the fact that they were both available, um, and the timetables, especially for supposedly Islam's out injured despite hitting the slopes the last few weeks. Um, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there's not a bigger Justin Gaethje fan on this planet than yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you've self-proclaimed as your favorite fighter. I mean, a million times. So I think it'll be an exciting 15 minutes or whatever it lasts, but it is kind of worthless. It's worthless, and it's just not. It doesn't. First of all, the BMF thing for an organization that supposedly doesn't do gimmick fights, that's entertaining. Again, we have
Mhm,
the BMF thing.
mhm.
Um, I don't know, man. I hate being so negative about this stuff because the card it's a pretty loaded card. It's 300. People expected like 8 title fights. Anybody with a brain who's looked at especially 200 knew that it was just going to be kind of a mishmash of fighters' names that they were going to put on a card to try to sell it. They're doing that the same thing that they did, they did the previous one. Now the other one had some stuff fall through. Fingers crossed this one doesn't turn to chaos, and then you end up with Rakic, Prohaska main event or some craziness or this. I mean, I don't listen. I think Justin Gage is going to beat the living hell out of him. I
Yeah.
just got a text from a relative saying the same thing right before that, right before me saying this. Um, I don't see
Listen,
any way Max Holloway wins this fight. I
yeah,
don't. I don't. I don't.
I my only hope on the business side is that they're paying these guys a buttload of money to do this. Because first of all, we all know Justin Gaethje wanted the actual title. He's always had his eye on the actual title since he walked through the UFC cage doors, and he walked away the champion at World Series of Fighting. And Max Holloway. I mean, Max Holloway's the lighter guy. Whatever the catch weight, BMF weight, whatever they're gonna do as far as when Dana White made his screaming, stuttering announcement on social media, he didn't say what weight class or any details. I know UFC News just put up a post, but I'm taken aback because this is not a fight. This is not a fight that I like for either of them because it's a deterrent. It's taking away from what Gaethje truly wants, and the only thing I hope is that they're getting the money that they deserve. That they're both entertaining fighters, never disappoint fighting their entire careers. But you're obviously I see Gaethje winning this just and I think Max Holloway, who's already taken a lot. Both men have taken a lot of damage, but you're subjecting somebody that's fights in a lighter weight class that probably even when they're not in competition weight, he's probably still lighter than Justin Gaethje. Like you're subjecting him to all kinds of damage. I mean, I don't. I hope they're getting a lot of money for it. I'm not saying I'm not going to watch it. Of course, I'm going to watch it. I'm a big fan of both guys, but I just hope they're getting they're. I hope they're getting their pockets filled for this one because this is some. Honestly, the 300 fights. I know it's a stacked card, but none of the fights have made me be like, oh, that's fun. Like
No, that's the thing.
I'm more excited for UFC Mexico than I am 300.
Yeah. Yeah. Brandon Royval stepping in the main event
Mm-hmm.
there. Some more breaking news from earlier this week. Yeah, man. I do like Bobby Green. I like Jim Miller. I like that fight. two kind of
Mhm.
old dudes, lower 15 ranked Bobby Green, and then Jim Miller trying to break into that after winning several fights in a row now, kind of being the gatekeeper for the 15, top 15, and now he has a chance to really jump into it with a big win. Um, but getting back to the Gagey, I just I just this is a fight where somebody, we saw it with Ferguson against Gagey. You see it with these guys, and um, it just takes a lot off of these guys' careers, especially two guys
Mhm.
like this, where it's going to come down to somebody going out on their shield, and
Mhm.
it's one of those fights. So, sadly, it could be the last fight for either one of them. It could be the last fight for both of them if it goes, to a potential war that it could be. Um,
And Max Holloway's. I'm not, picking Gaethje to win, but I'm not making like Max Holloway some slouch. Like, Gaethje has taken so much damage in his career. Now he's taking this damage that's making him kind of like fight this fight that's in between him and the fight that he wants. Like again, I just hope they're getting paid. He's going to take damage, and then how much of that damage carries over into the fight that he actually wants? You know, Jake
which
Sage
yeah, which
says,
will be his last shot.
"Yeah, we're all
Which will be
scared
his
for
last
Max, Jake."
shot. Yeah, I mean, and it's two likable guys, so obviously you don't want to
Hmm.
see somebody get, you know, destroyed or permanently. I mean, we might be jumping the gun here, but that's what we're looking at. We're
No,
looking at.
it's
I mean,
it's
they're
going to
calling it.
be
It's gonna be
fight
a
of the year
bloodbath.
candidate and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with that. I don't want to, jinx it, but it is what it is. It's the card's starting to fill out.
Hmm.
Whatever comes out for 300, fans are gonna be disappointed because they built up this, idea that it was just gonna be, this mega thing, and I think we're just going to end up with hopefully a night of good fights. But
Yeah.
but names, I always complain that there's a lot of no names. This is names, but kind of fights that don't seem like they're going anywhere. There is a couple on the main card, the Oliveira, Sayukin, and is one that jumps out
Hmm.
as a fight that has a lot of meaning. And then obviously whatever the title fight is that headlines, they seem real hesitant to announce Leon Edwards, Muhammad. I think they know
Hmm.
the backlash they'll get if they announce that as the first title fight announced.
Hmm.
Fans will naturally assume that will be the main event, and if it is, then there's gonna be a large outcry for that. But I'll be interested to see what the pricing is
I
for
mean, they
tickets for that
definitely
event.
they yeah. Oh, it's probably going to be ridiculously expensive, but
You would think, but with
the,
the but if that's the headliner and the name on your tickets, see, this isn't the old school UFC where it's just UFC, 260. This is UFC whatever 290, 300, and it's gonna be, and whatever the headliner is gonna be the headliner on it. It's gonna say, Muhammad versus Edwards, and if that's the two names on the top of the billing, it will affect, I think, the ticket sales, especially for like the real casual. You know,
Mhm.
um, hardcore fan can look down the thing or know that even that's a fair fight. But I don't know. We got that, and then we had the breaking news today that again last week we had mentioned we were waiting for word from PFL about what they were doing with Bellator and the
Yeah.
rumors of a champ versus champ event, and it looks like we got that February 24th in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, yeah. February 24th. It's going to be an early card. It's actually I mentioned UFC Mexico. It's the same day as that. So you're going to have if you're into MMA, that's going to be a big February 24th is going to be a big MMA day for you. Um, the thing I like about this is that we were like you said last week we were worried about PFL sitting on their hands about actually doing something with the Bellator brand. So I like that they're starting early in the year, at least in the first quarter, with making a fight with both brands. A lot of good fights on the card. I actually published the entire card over at My MMA News. I'll put a link in the description for you guys to look it over. Um, but there's a lot of obviously they took all the best names out of the Bellator roster that they could grab that they didn't want to lose to get them fighting PFL champions. A lot of good fights on the card. Um, I should bring that up so we can look. I mean, the thing that jumped out at me first was the fact that Aaron Pico is the last fight on the opening card, like the prelims. He's the headlining prelim, and hold on, let me just bring it up here. And I know they did that because he was pretty adamant about walking and doing his Olympic thing if they didn't make a move with him soon. So that's a name you want to keep because he's young, he's talented. You can still build him up. He's at a point in his career that you could really do something. I'm bringing up the article from my MMA News just so we could look at it. But the fights on the card, I mean, the main, you're talking about the marquee. It's Renan Pereira, who won the championship this past season against Ryan Bader. So you got the PFL champ versus the Bellator heavyweight champ, Impa Kisagane versus Johnny Eblin for the middleweight title, or their super fight title. Now, one thing I left out in this article was that they're making unique belts for this event, which is pretty cool, and it's unified MMA rules, so there's elbows and everything. This is not PFL seasonal rules. Magomed Kirov versus Jason Jackson. Jackson's belt on the Bellator side, and Magomed Kirimov is PFL. Jesus Pineda versus Patricio Pitbull, which I think our homie in Italy was already talking about that last week. Whatchamacallit, Vadim Nemkov, showcase bout. Vadim Nemkov versus Bruno Capizzola, former PFL champ versus former Bellator champ.
Moving up
Thiago
to heavyweight.
Santos, yeah, heavyweight, light heavyweight, showcase Thiago Santos versus Yoel Romero because they're not trying to lose that name. And I really like the Clay Collard versus AJ McKee. Collard being a contender at the PFL side always made it kind of like right to the finish line, and McKee being a former champ, so that fight should be a lot of fun. But I'm definitely oh, I didn't share that, but I was reading it off the article that I posted, but it's definitely it's fun. Like it's a fun card. And again, I'm glad that they didn't sit on it. And then Clarissa Shields coming back to MMA. She's fighting Kelsey DeSantis on the prelims, and Gabriel Braga versus Aaron Pico, two featherweight contenders. And we have the image of the card right here for you guys to look at it. So I'm excited. I'm glad they didn't sit on their asses and or sit on their hands and with the brand, and like they're moving forward. It doesn't look like they're going to make the mistake that the UFC did when they got the Pride brand and not use any of. They're using all the branding, the names, and making it a versus thing, SmackDown versus Raw, if you will. I think that's the way to go now with this current state of combat sports, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, card's not bad. I'm a little bit ignorant on some of the PFL guys. I've never claimed that I watch every second of PFL, but I do know some of. I do know most of these guys. I haven't watched the majority of their fights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, someone's gonna have a bad night, but I see Bellator basically sweeping it. I really don't. The Jackson Megamed Karima fight interests me. Um, and then the Collard McKee fight are the two that I'm probably most interested in. Romero
Mm-hmm.
Santos, I'm kind of like, I kind of see Santos winning that, so maybe not a clean sweep, but to me those are kind of UFC guys, so I don't even,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, that's the UFC fight. Yeah. You're
but
right.
I just looking through the stuff, I don't, unless
I
Bader's in the
like the
wall,
I
you
like the
know,
middleweight, the co-main Eblin versus Kasangane, because
I just think Abram's gonna. I think he's
yeah,
too good. So I mean, I literally,
yeah.
I mean, I kind of, part of me wants there to be a sweep because I'm a Bellator homer, and I kind of want to be like, well, that sucks that they're the ones who got bought out, and it wasn't the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm just glad we got an event announced. I gotta say though, man, I don't. Uh, Not that it's in Saudi Arabia. Like, interesting how this gets announced the day after Saudi Arabia kicks the UFC out.
Mm.
For trying to give him some bush league, fight night Saudi card
Yeah,
that
yeah.
wasn't going to fly. Um, I, I, listen, it's not gonna be successful. I hate to say that, but a noon pay per view, a 3:30 pay per view from Saudi
Mm.
Arabia is not going to be successful. It barely is successful for the UFC. I don't think they do huge numbers on their Saudi Arabia pay-per-view or their
Yeah, when they do those early
Dubai,
ones. Yeah.
you know. Historically that's been kind of a not a great spot. Maybe if you have Poirier versus Nurmagomedov or Gaethje versus Nurmagomedov, you're pulling some good numbers. But I
Mm.
mean, if I'm sitting the over under on pay-per-view buys, I'd be shocked if this did more than like 40,000. And that might
Mm.
be generous. I mean, I gotta be. I mean, and I want it to be successful, but to me, you're going to where I mean, you're taking PFL's never been in Saudi Arabia, so you're taking the brand, you know, there. Basically, Saudi Arabia is just a big tailgate barbecue party now, where they're just
Yeah,
bringing
they're
in
going in heavy
fighters
on
to fight
sports. Yeah.
whoever they want, and the fights don't have to mean anything. I mean, in this case, they do. They're looking more for the showcase, the fireworks, the pageantry. They're kind of turning Saudi Arabia into like a pride on steroids in a sense, where it's just like over the top and the most amount of money spent on stuff that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Um, I think that that's dangerous because, I mean, for these fighters, it's great. They're just going to get bought up by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is just basically going to become their own promotion, and they're
Mhm.
just going to bring in whoever they want. And fighters that don't sign
Yeah,
contracts
like
will be
Riyadh
fighting
season
for.
keeps coming up in boxing and MMA. The way that they're putting money into it, you keep seeing
They'll
Riyadh
just call
season,
it
Riyadh
Riyadh
season.
Season MMA, and
Yeah.
they'll sign these guys. Poirier will
Hmm.
become a free agent, and they'll offer him $100 million. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the kind of money that they can throw around. They were offering the golfers, hundreds of millions of dollars
Hmm.
to change their uh,
The
allegiance from the
LIV. Yeah.
PGA to the Live Tour. Yeah, so I mean, I just think that's going to happen. I don't think it's great for us. I mean, the fights happen. We're going to get a chance to watch them. As far as the live viewing, I mean, I kind of signed off on probably Bellator's probably never having an event in the United States again. Doesn't sound like they want to do it because it's going to step on their own toes.
Yeah.
PFL can use Bellator, across seas. The minute they do a Bellator event in San Jose, people are going to go, okay, well, this is better than PFL. I mean,
Mm.
they got to be careful how they do that because otherwise they're going to, make themselves look bad. Let's say you have a great Bellator event and then 3 weeks later you have a PFL event that's a snoozer. You risk too much of killing your own brand name by
Yeah.
your own
Unless
brand.
unless unless they keep on like if they keep setting it up quarterly for these versus cards,
If they do
they
that,
could
and
do. Yeah.
maybe they can work that out with Saudi Arabia, where every 3 months or every 6 months, maybe twice a year, you do this. And that's the place they hold them, and they pay a bunch
Yeah.
of money, and hopefully there's a big stage and fireworks. I mean, hopefully this isn't just some dark room PFL event.
No, no, I don't think
Like
so.
let's
Because
like
one thing we've seen is that when they do the Riyadh season stuff with the past the stuff they've done recently with boxing and the Ngannou and Fury and all that stuff, they do go big. They go pretty big. But the reason I'm bringing up the keeping the brand and versus together, you have a list of contenders, guys that were next in line for Bellator titles that are still waiting to find out what the hell am I doing, which is why I'm interested in that middleweight bout because Aaron Jeffrey was next in line to fight Eblin, and he's literally training his ass off because better to be ready than to not be ready. And it's just like and I'm curious. I'm gonna find out I'm gonna ask him, but like his reaction to. I mean, he'll post it anyway. But I mean, you got to start. You have a whole other roster of fighters that want to know what's going on. And the other thing, which is worth mentioning, because Cyborg is boxing this weekend on which is going to be broadcast on Spectation Sports, by the way, for folks that want to watch it. Um, people are like, without Cyborg, you're not going to sell pay-per-views because you didn't put Cyborg versus Harrison on this card. But that's why she's not on the card. She's had this boxing bout booked and ready to go while all this, Bellator PFL nonsense was going on towards the end of last year. Not nonsense, but we were waiting until we were waiting to know until we knew. And she would, being smart, wanted to stay busy and find something to do and make, fight and make money. So she's got this boxing event. So that's why I feel like this is the first of many. I don't know how far ahead that they planned, because the other thing that's scary about it is I think it was Kevin. I don't know if it was Kevin Isle. I forget who spoke with Peter Murray maybe 2 weeks ago. I think it was Kevin Isle. He does his own thing now since Yahoo dropped him. But he talked to Peter Murray, and Peter Murray said that there's. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it wasn't Kevin Isle. It was John Morgan. John Morgan did a podcast with Peter Murray, and Murray said that the PFL Challenger Series is on the back burner now because of everything going on. That was like their contender series for folks that don't know. That's where they find a lot of up and coming talent for their season. So if that's on the back burner, like, are you just going to try and throw a bunch of Bellator fighters into your season? Which I'm sure they're fine. It's a shot at $1 million, and they're fighting and they know they got work. But I mean, you're giving a lot of guys that were, they had a ranking system in place where they knew where they were at and what was next for them, and now you're throwing them into a mix of a whole season worth of fights under a varied rule set. I don't know. I hope they come with a little more news than just this in the weeks to come.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what unfolds there. I imagine Aaron Jeffrey probably should get the winner of this fight, no matter what organization it's for. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have a lot of these guys, like you said, aren't gonna be. The idea of going for $1 million is great, but the idea of hinging your title shot that you've already earned on having to win 3 more fights, um, at least 3 more fights, right? Because they have
Yeah,
qualifications and everything. So you're talking maybe
yeah,
4 fights. Is definitely something that's probably not the ideal route for a bunch of those guys. So we'll figure out that more. We'll talk about that more when the end of February starts to roll around. Meanwhile, there was a quiet event last week at the Apex, but really the UFC kicks off 2024 this weekend with UFC 297 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Um, in a run up to UFC 300 of cards, UFC 297 kind of gets the short end of the stick here with 298 and 299 looking pretty damn loaded. However, there are a few good fights on this card, 2 title fights um, as well. I mean, starting with the main card, um, like I said, top heavy. The first fight of the night, the first fight of the main card is actually one that might be the fight of the night. Arnold Allen, number 4 ranked
mm-hmm.
against Mosar Evloev, number 9. Um, heck of a fight. I mean, really,
Yeah,
kind of a toss up at my point. Evloev is 17-0 undefeated, slight underdog, according to the DraftKings odds we're looking at.
yeah. I
Um,
think they're still DraftKings, right? Yeah.
yeah.
They
Um,
got they have plus 140 for Allen and minus 166 for
Real close
uh,
though. That's
Ivlev.
real
Yeah,
close. I'm actually going to take Arnold Allen to win this fight. I think he gives
yeah,
Evloev his first loss. It's got to come eventually. I think Allen's a step up from who he's been fighting, and I'll take Allen to win this fight. Don't necessarily know how 3 round fight, but I will. I'll take him to win this fight and give the first L to the Russian.
yeah. No, I'm with you too. I mean, coming off of a loss, I think that motivates him to. When a guy's coming off of a loss, I feel it, and they're ranked. I think that just makes him more dangerous. Um, Chris Curtis versus Mark Andre Barrialt.
Curtis seems like he's fighting every other weekend. Um, I mean, really seems like he's on a lot of these cards.
hmm
Um, I'm going to take Curtis to win. I'm not sure how accurate those records are, but we know how UFC do it. Um, no, I guess it do look accurate compared to. Yeah, I'll take Curtis to win. Super active. Um, let's say he wins by finishing the third round TKO. I'll give
Yeah,
him a chance to do that, but yeah, I see Curtis winning that fight.
I agree with that. And I know these. I mean, that's a Canadian fighter, and he's got home turf, but I can't disagree with anything you said there. Welterweight bout: Neil Magny versus Mike Malone.
I'm going with Malott. You mentioned
Yeah.
Canada. I think he's the one who gets the boost from the hometown there.
hmm
I think Magny's on the way down. I think he peaked about 4 or 5 years ago. Um, kind of got screwed out of maybe a couple bigger fights, but
Yeah.
opportunities with his winning streak he had. But I'll take Malott to win convincingly. I'll take him by decision though, because I got too much respect for Magny.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you there. So far we're in agreement with the whole pay per view thus far. Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva on a bantamweight title bout. Interesting fight here. Hmm. I feel
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
you go ahead. You go ahead. No, you
Oh,
go
I was
ahead.
just gonna point out the fact that I think this might be the first fighter in UFC history, Mayra Bueno Silva, that is coming off of that's getting a title fight coming off of a failed PED test.
Hmm.
Um, so that's as her fight win over Holly Holm
Forget
was
it.
turned
There's
to
no
a
more
no
USADA now.
contest.
UFC does
So
their own testing now.
yeah, so that's, and I'm not saying she was shooting horse testosterone, but she definitely popped for something, was suspended, fight was ruled a no contest. So she gets a title fight against Raquel Pennington. I mean, of all the fights that I don't care about, I might care about this one the least. I mean, this is a. Uh, I'm gonna take Buena Silva because in my world, I can't imagine in 2023 Raquel Pennington being the UFC champ. I mean, I just can't.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't mean to be disrespectful, but holy crap, what is that? What has happened to that division?
yeah. I'm just, I'm just gonna
Just gonna move
side with.
on.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move on. I'm with you. I'm with the pick. By the way, we're in agreement with all the picks. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be in agreement with this one too. Sean Strickland, main event. Sean Strickland versus Jacobs Duplessis of South Africa. Uh, diplomatic immunity. I don't know. I uh, I would like Sean Strickland to hold on to that belt. But I think it depends on I feel like there's other things that make Sean Strickland a worrisome champion. You know, what he's carrying within himself, what he brings into a fight is what concerns me. I don't know if he always turns that into to good, a championship performance. Obviously, he did against Israel Adesanya, but I don't know. This fight seems to have a lot of extra nonsense attached to it with all the personal stuff and the fight in the arena and that the cameras were there for. Like it's just weird to me. It's just weird to me. Um, I don't know who I want to say Duplessis might take it, but I wouldn't. Again, I'd like Strickland to hold on to that belt just because of Team USA over here.
I think Duplessis wins. I'm taking second round submission finish. I think
Hmm.
he gets Strickland down to the ground and is able to have his way. Um, Strickland had a career performance against Adesanya, but I
Hmm.
think it's going to be a one and done title thing for him. I think Duplessis wins this, setting up a mega fight. If he wins it easily, I think you could get Adesanya versus Duplessis headlining UFC 300. I could see
Hmm.
that being the pull together fight with a storyline that the UFC would put on there
Yeah.
to appease the fans, and then
Oh yeah.
Muhammad Edwards then could be your co-main event, and
Plus,
you
I
have
know they have plans for Africa and South Africa and all. And if Duplessis wins with everything, all the stuff that they want to do, that fits right into everything they want to put money
But
into.
they say that. I mean, we're getting Yan versus Whaley, a China versus China fight at UFC 300. We're getting UFC Mexico, and at least they have it in UFC Mexico, but we're in UFC Independence Day. It just seems like they've dropped the ball on having Mexicans champions fight in Mexico and
Hmm.
and champions of all countries. I mean, you realize that we're probably gonna get old and pass away before Connor fights an MMA fight in Ireland, right? Like, think about that. Like, not an MMA fight because he fought in Cage Warriors and stuff, and he might have had one out there in Dublin
Hmm.
for that. But a UFC fight. What is? I mean, I don't even know what this. I've heard Croke Park 1,000 times, and I'm like, is that ever going to be a thing? I mean, that's what's wild to me. So, um, it's just never what you expect. I mean, I didn't
Jake
expect
Say's
Michael
talking about
Chandler.
I like the Bo Nickel fight that Jake Say's just.
He's
I do
fighting a
like that.
jobber. Bo Nickel's gonna win that fight so quick. It's
I
just
just want him to get to the point where he fights. What's his name that everybody likes? The guy with
Cosmat.
the. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I just
Yep.
want that fight to happen. That's the fight.
Oh, I think
Make
that fight will eventually happen. I think that those
that's
are the
happening this year for sure. Yeah.
Maybe not this year. I can see that next year. I think Cosmo's going to end up, like I said, being the champion. And I think Bo Nickel could be one of his first, fights. But Nickel's got to win 2 or 3, like really,
Mm.
like he's fighting guys that are on like 1-5 streaks and stuff. He's gonna have to beat
They don't
two.
care about that, dude.
You're
They
right.
don't
You're
make
right. You're right. You're right. I'm old school.
yeah,
Like
yeah. No,
you know,
you're thinking about rankings and
I'm
yeah,
thinking
you're
like
you're
you got to
thinking
win a fight.
logically. You
You
got to
know.
remember, yeah,
Yeah, that's right. It's all about the money.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so you mentioned Cyborg boxing this Friday night. Actually, out here at Pachanga. I'm
Hmm.
might go, might go. Uh,
Our boy Fernando Gonzalez is on that card too.
Fernando Gonzalez is on the card as well, so um, he'd actually be the real reason I'd go to
Mm.
support a homie out there. But yeah, so that's on Spectation Sports. I didn't know that though. So there will be streaming options for that. And then
Yeah,
you got
they
UFC.
announced that last Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, UFC pay per view on Saturday. Um, if you haven't checked your calendars, it is a Tuesday night, so fans will be noticing that we have moved back to our original slot. We're not going to try to be like PFL and bounce around 6 days a week. Uh, Ideally, it'll be Tuesday, and then the occasional shift when real life kicks in. But
Any Stipe, Jake Says asking Stipe versus John News. Hey man, you check Instagram for that. That's all I can tell you. Because who the hell
no,
knows?
no recovering. Yeah, let's just hope
I
Stipe
saw
can
I
walk
saw a
by
meme
that
with
time.
him and his wife. That's the last thing I
Yeah,
saw about John
uh,
Jones.
yeah, we'll see about that one. I know Jones and Aspinall had their back and forth on Twitter a
Mhm.
week ago, but that's way down the line. That'll probably be MSG in November-ish. So I think that's going to do it for this week. Fans can check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everyone. And that's it. Have a good night.
See you next week.